I seriously don't know how you could look at this upcoming season and not think that there's a million different ways to draft a good team. Think about this for a second, right? You have rookies just firing out of the gate. It wasn't like that before. You have a ton of different teams that have vacated, a couple hundred targets in the passing game, and so many running backs from top to bottom in this draft that are just going to open things up for us like crazy. So when I'm looking at this draft, I don't see this as I'm going zero RB or I'm going RB heavy. I think it's a lot different than last year, a lot different than seasons past for sure. And I'm just going to go with the best value I can. You're going to see that in this video. Must draft players from every round. You know exactly what I mean as we work through this. And one disclaimer, I'm not saying these players on the list, we're going top 8 rounds. Every round will be crazy, but I had to put it in there. I'm not saying every player on this list you need to reach for and take them a round ahead of where they're going. But when it comes to you and you're on the clock, you know where you're going once you watch this video, and we'll be in good shape. So hit that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below, and follow me at Loughran_D on Twitter, LOUGHY_D. I try and read and respond to all the comments, so hit me up, whether it's here or on Twitter. Let's make it happen. All right, number 1 in the first round. We could have gone a lot of different ways here. It's the first round. Everybody's good, but we're going Ja'Marr Chase, and here's why. Remember that whole Ja'Marr Chase is struggling with drops in the preseason nonsense? It's time to be concerned, everyone said. Yeah, 81 receptions, 1,455 receiving yards, and 13 touchdowns later. No one's talking about Chase dropping footballs anymore. In fact, he did drop 9 last year, good for 3rd most in the league, but no one gives a shit about that when you're racking up multiple 200-yard games in your rookie season. That's why no one's talking about Deebo Samuel leading the league in drops and drop rate, because he's elite. Chase comes into his 2nd season as the top dog in Cincinnati's passing game, ahead of another very good receiver in T. Higgins and a low-impact fantasy guy in Tyler Boyd. So he can literally do everything, which is why I love him in the first round and have all the confidence in the world. He finished his rookie season as the wide receiver 5, his rookie season, but was 4th in receiving yards, 3rd in touchdowns, 2nd in yards per reception, 3rd in yards after the catch, 7th in yards per route run, 5th in end zone targets, and 4th in 100-yard games. Oh, and he was 3rd in receptions of 40-plus yards and 3rd in deep targets with 34. I mean, that's amazing. And the only thing that held Chase back from being even better was he didn't see as many targets as some of the other elite receivers, or as high of a target share at 23%. But that number jumped to 25% in the postseason when it really counted, and he broke the record by a mile for most receiving yards in the postseason as a rookie. Yeah, it helps when you get to the Super Bowl, but you get the point. And all of the intangibles are here. So are the conditions in Cincinnati. So even though Higgins is going to get plenty of opportunities too, the Bengals don't really throw a ton to their running backs, and they're going to concentrate the majority of targets around a few players, starting with Chase. Round 2, CeeDee Lamb. You definitely don't need to do this, so I wouldn't recommend it. But if you drafted Lamb in the first round, I don't think you'd be crazy. I mean, the biggest issue with Lamb in his first 2 seasons has never been talent, but really just the lack of elite target share that the most notable top-tier receivers see every season. He had a target share right around 20% and was a wide receiver 19 in PPR formats. He was 23rd in targets, 22nd in receptions, 16th in yards, and 25th in touchdowns. So it's not like this would have been worth a 2nd pick in 2021. I totally get that. But he was also competing with Amari Cooper for targets, who has averaged 6.6 per game and had 99 looks across 15 starts. Cooper's in Cleveland now. Cedric Wilson is also gone. And the Cowboys only brought in James Washington and 3rd-round rookie Jalen Tolbert, who is expected to be a Week 1 starter. Meanwhile, Michael Gallup tore his ACL midway through last season and isn't expected to be ready by the start of the year anyway. So you vacated over 100 targets from Cooper, assuming he played a full season, and made no notable signings in the passing game. That puts Lamb on a pass-heavy offense that ran the 2nd most plays per game last year and in 2020. I should also point out that the final 2/3 of the Cowboys schedule looks really nice for Lamb. He gets matchups against Jacksonville, Houston, Chicago, the Giants, Detroit, Indianapolis, and Minnesota. And PFF has all of these teams' secondaries ranked in the bottom half of football. If this isn't the breakout season for Lamb, I really don't know when he'll get one. To throw in an honorable mention here, I got to go with Mike Evans. And like I said, there's just so much to choose from. You really can't go wrong in so many of these spots. But in the second round, you have to throw Evans in as an honorable mention because he's a monster in the red zone. And Tom Brady's throwing him the football. While Chris Godwin watches from the sidelines, Rob Gronkowski watches presumably from home, and Antonio Brown watches somewhere from outer space. Evans and really any prominent pass catcher in Tampa Bay are never players where I worry too much about target share. And the reason for that is very simple. The more you throw the ball, the less a player getting 25, 30% of targets matters. Yeah, obviously that would be amazing on a team like the Bucs, but it hasn't been necessary, especially given Tom Brady's insane efficiency. Brady attempted more passes than any quarterback last year, and it wasn't even close. And the Bucs led the league in pass play percentage by a wide margin, which is fascinating because with really good football teams, you usually see a bit more balance than that, but we don't want it. And that's not what we get with Tampa Bay. So when you strip away all of the target competition from last season with Gronk and Brown gone, Godwin with no timetable to return, even though they're saying he could be back for the start of the regular season, so it's worth keeping an eye on, and Russell Gage being currently installed as the wide receiver 2, Evans could absolutely eat. And last season, despite playing alongside all those guys, he still finished second in receiving touchdowns, 8th in end zone targets, and 9th in fantasy points at his position. Evans also finished second in fantasy points per touch behind only Gabriel Davis. So you know how efficient he can be in this stripped down offense. If you guys haven't checked out BetMGM yet, maybe you're not even sports bettors. Well, I'll give you a reason to be a sports bettor, and it's called free money. It's that simple. I shouldn't need to say anything else. BetMGM is going to give you $200 for free, and all you have to do is sign up using the link in the pinned comments. You'll see it right there, pinned comment from our account. Sign up, deposit $10. Take that $10, put it on any team to win tonight. Baseball is going on right now, so you got to be baseball. Shit, I don't care. You don't have to watch the game even. It doesn't matter. It's like the tooth fairy. You put $10 in under your pillow, and instead of a tooth, of course, you wake up the next day, there's $200 in there. It's literally that simple. You put it on either team to win. They don't actually need to win. It doesn't matter what the outcome is. That $10 when the bet settles turns into $200. You'll cover your damn league fees for fantasy football simply by doing that. And we're still in July. All you have to do is use that pinned comment, deposit $10, put it on any team to win, and boom, flips into $200 as that bet is settled. Take advantage. Even if you're not into sports betting, you can build that bankroll up for the NFL season and get into it. Have some fun. BetMGM. Links in the pinned comment. Round 3, Michael Pittman. I love this guy. We all love this guy. At least we should. And I already talked about him in a previous video, so I'll try and keep this one relatively short, which is tough for me. But simply put, Pittman could be a true alpha receiver this year. He has all of the requisite tools to be that guy. And with Matt Ryan at the helm, we could finally see it going into his 3rd year. Pittman falls into pretty much an ideal situation for 2022. And here's what I mean. He gets a quarterback who upgrades from the 31st ranked pass blocking offensive line last year, according to PFF, and the 2nd fewest rushing yards as a team. Upgrades to the Colts, who PFF grades as a top 10 offensive line and have arguably the best running back in the NFL in Jonathan Taylor. And yeah, the Colts are clearly going to lean on Taylor a lot, but we should be perfectly fine sacrificing a little bit of volume for the efficiency here. Because Pittman's only real competition in the passing game is the oft-injured Paris Campbell, rookie 2nd rounder Alex Pierce, and Mo Alley Cox at tight end. And Nyheim Hines is out of the backfield, but it's hard to believe Pittman, who had a top 10 target share last year of 25% and ran routes on nearly 97% of dropbacks, can't excel in this offense. He's a big body receiver who can dominate on contested catches and in the red zone, which is exactly what we're looking for. And tell me this isn't nuts. Outside of last season, which was just a complete debacle in the passing game for Atlanta, Matt Ryan hasn't had a single year without one of his receivers finishing in the top 7 at the position since 2013. And that was the year Julio Jones only played 5 games. But Ryan still got Harry fucking Douglas over 1,000 yards for a wide receiver 22 finish. So if you end up drafting running backs in the first 2 rounds, or say Kelsey and a running back, getting Pittman as your wide receiver 1 in the 3rd round could pay huge dividends and set you up really nice. Another honorable mention for round 3, Keenan Allen. He's going in the 3rd round, and I'd be remiss not to just mention his value in PPR formats year over year over year, because Allen hasn't finished worse than the wide receiver 12 in 5 straight seasons, and he's missed basically the entire season 6 years ago, which is the last time he didn't. So if you're looking for a reliable every week PPR stud, Allen gives you that floor you're looking for. He's racked up 100 plus receptions in 4 of his last 5 campaigns and only came 3 short of that century mark in 2018. And he's on the 5th most pass heavy offense in the league that ran the 5th most plays in 2021 and has the 2nd shortest odds to be the highest scoring team in football this year. It's so hard to go wrong with Allen. But keep in mind though, and this is important, even though Allen had a team leading 23.3% target share last year and should replicate that again in 2022, I'd only rather have him over Mike Williams in PPR formats. So adjust your rankings and your approach accordingly, depending on what you're playing. Oh, and while Mike Williams is definitely the deep threat in LA, it's important to point out that both of them had 12 targets inside the 10-yard line last year, but Allen was way more effective, hauling in 6 touchdowns on 9 receptions, while Williams had only 2 scores on 3 grabs. Round 4, Terry McLaurin. What if I told you Carson Wentz is by far the best quarterback Terry McLaurin has played with? It sounds insane, right? But it's not. And you just heard me talk about Michael Pittman getting an upgrade from Wentz to Matt Ryan. All of that can be true because in McLaurin's 3 years in Washington, 8 different quarterbacks have started games. Those names, Case Keenum, Dwayne Haskins, Colt McCoy, a post-injury Alex Smith who just checked down to J.D. McKissick every game, Kyle Allen, Taylor Heineke, Garrett Gilbert, and Ryan Fitzpatrick, who clearly would have been amazing for McLaurin's fantasy value, but his season was ended 16 snaps into the week 1, and that kind of derailed the plan. But you think about it, coming from someone who was the furthest thing from a Carson Wentz fan, in myself, he's still an upgrade. I mean, yeah, Matt Ryan's an upgrade that I definitely take over Wentz in Indy, but Wentz is an upgrade that I definitely take over whatever the mess of an alternative would have been in Washington this season. And to be fair, he had a 27-7 touchdown to interception ratio last year. See, I can be objective. He's basically a league average quarterback, if that, but you'll take that if you're McLaurin over what he's had in the past 3 seasons. Round 4 honorable mention is Courtland Sutton. And honestly, the only reason I'm mentioning him as a honorable mention and not a must-draft player in the 4th round is because I already used him in a video. Full disclosure, I do prefer him over McLaurin, and he's going a couple picks earlier, but he should be. Because you have a 6'4", 215 player who's also a deep threat and now has arguably the best deep ball passer in the league at quarterback. Yeah, Wilson, when healthy, is that good on deep passes. So much so that he has led the league in touchdowns of 20-plus yards in 4 of the last 7 seasons. Bonkers. And I won't spend any more time on Sutton. We already talked about him. You can check out the previous video, his top breakout players for 2022. But just know this. Much like McLaurin, Sutton's played with garbage quarterbacks. He's never had a passing offense that was outside of the bottom 8, and he's now another year removed from the ACL injury. So the Wilson-Sutton connection could be awesome this year, both downfield and in the red zone, and there's a massive ceiling here too. Absolutely love Courtland Sutton in the 4th round, and if he ended up as my wide receiver 1 and I was loaded at running backs early on, I'm totally okay with that. Round 5, Darnell Mooney. I'm not in love with anybody in the 5th round here. If we're using Underdog ADP, which right now is the most accurate, granted it is best ball, so keep that in mind. But Darnell Mooney's an insanely intriguing option at the back of the round or the beginning of the 6th. He was clearly Justin Fields' top target last season and somehow managed to accumulate over 1,000 receiving yards despite truly awful quarterback play. And I think that's why Mooney's so interesting. And despite all of the immense struggles that we saw from both Fields and Andy Dalton, Mooney still finished as the PPR wide receiver 23 and the wide receiver 14 over the final 9 games of the season. And not just that, Mooney was 6th in targets and target share among all wide receivers over that stretch. And I know that Fields missed a bunch of those games, but I'm not really sure it matters. He can't be any worse than last season, and that's not hyperbole. And he really can't be any worse than Andy Dalton was either. And the Bears receiving core is a barren wasteland behind Mooney. We're talking about Byron Pringle and 25-year-old rookie Velus Jones, who's actually kind of intriguing, but this is kind of similar to why I was so high on Brandon Cooks last year, as someone who was completely ignored in drafts because of bad quarterbacking. Mooney's definitely being drafted higher than Cooks was, but they're similar in that a huge target share, 0 competition, and talent can take you over the top and allow you to well outperform your ADP. And touchdowns are the obvious big issue here when it comes to Darnell Mooney. The Bears offense probably remains below average, and he's going to need to improve on contested catches, even though he's not the biggest fella out there. but Mooney is a legitimate deep threat who can put up some monster stat lines from week to week. And ultimately, though, it all comes down to Fields. Can he progress or will he not? But there's the silver lining here. The sky's the absolute limit for Mooney if Fields does progress. And we already saw him finish as a top 25 receiver despite pathetic quarterbacking. So the floor here is really high as well. Round 6, one of my favorite guys to target this year in this round, in this region, is A.J. Dillon. Maybe the most inexplicable disparity in ADP among any single backfield this season, in my opinion at least, is A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones. I don't get it, not even a little bit. And Jones is being drafted as a top 9 running back with an ADP of 17.5, while Dillon's going off the board as the RB24 with an ADP of 67.4. What am I missing? I mean, I'd argue that I'm not missing anything at all, but you'll have to hear me out first, because Dillon, over the final 6 games of the 2021 season that he played alongside Jones, I'm not including weeks 11 and 18 because Jones was out, he led the entire league in goal line carries with 10 and was second in red zone carries behind only Jonathan Taylor with 29. Jones had 1 goal line carry and 5 red zone carries over that stretch. And over that same span, so basically the second half of the season, Dillon had 86 carries to Jones' 55. All right, so what about pass catching, right? So obviously Dillon should be drafted 50 spots after Jones because he lacks receiving upside, right? Well, while Jones saw more targets than Dillon at 23-14 over that final 6-game stretch of the season, Dillon's 131 receiving yards were only 23 behind Jones. He caught 34 of 37 passes on the entire season, averaged a very solid 1.57 yards per route run, and isn't some incapable pass catcher like he's been labeled. The Packers drafted him in the 2nd round for a reason. Do we really think he's used less than he was last year down the stretch, or more? In my opinion, it's definitely more. And I get that Davante Adams' departure makes things look real nice for Jones, but not nearly nice enough if he's ceding a ton of goal line and red zone work to Dillon, and it ends up being a 60-40 split on the ground for Dillon too. So take the 6th round value on Dillon, get a piece of a solid offense, and don't think it's crazy at all if he outscores Jones on the season. In those final 6 weeks that the two backs played together, Dillon was the RB10, Jones was the RB17. Dillon saw 100 total looks, Jones saw 78. Anything can happen, but I don't think they should be this far separated in drafts at all. Round 7, Allen Lazard. Now, hold on. Before your head explodes, let me just explain. The Allen Lazard is a 7th round ADP on Underdog right now, but I think in a lot of your leagues, you're going to be able to get him way later than that. Okay. Drafters are just going to be a little sharper there. But it helps to see where a player is being drafted compared to other sites like ESPN or Yahoo, whatever. Where right now Lazard is well into the triple digits on all of those sites. And to be fair, he's always going to get drafted earlier on a best ball site like Underdog because stacking pass catchers with their quarterbacks is a priority. So I'm really just using round 7 as a placeholder for Lazard, just so we can talk about him, because you probably don't hear a lot of people talking about Allen Lazard. And you won't need to draft him here. You can get him probably like 9th or 10th round. But Davante Adams being in Las Vegas and Marquez Valdez-Scantling being in Kansas City means that the Packers' top pass catching options are Allen Lazard, 2nd round rookie Christian Watson, Sammy Watkins, Robert Tonyan, and I guess Randall Cobb. I mean, Adams' departure vacates 169 targets from last season, just him, or 10.6 per game. He had a 29% target share, 2nd highest in the league last year behind only Cooper Kupp, a 28% target share inside the 10, and he accounted for 30% of Rodgers' total touchdown passes. Add in MVS's targets, and we're looking at 224 total looks vacated. And of course, plenty will be redistributed to Aaron Jones, and I think A.J. Dillon too, and Watkins and Watson will be involved. But Rodgers has already talked about how excited he is to see what Lazard can do as the number 1. And what's also interesting is Lazard finished 12th among all receivers in touchdowns last year with 8. I know Tonyan was sidelined, but still, Lazard actually had more end zone targets than Adams last year at 11-10, and that was with him playing 2 fewer games. His other stats obviously left a lot to be desired. Don't get me wrong. But with the trust already established between Lazard and Rodgers in the end zone, and with both of the Packers' top deep threats gone from Green Bay, Lazard has a golden opportunity to explode with one of the all-time greats throwing him the ball. And believe it or not, Lazard was the PPR wide receiver 8 over the final 5 weeks of last season. There's a lot of upside here, and we already know Aaron Rodgers is almost loyal to a fault when it comes to his guys. Lazard can definitely be that guy. Round 8, Damien Harris. Man, Damien Harris is kind of getting shit on from an expectation standpoint. And I get it. Yeah, Bill Belichick has been notorious for using a carousel approach when it comes to running backs from year to year. And Ramondre Stevenson's a very capable runner himself. But Harris finished as the RB14 in PPR formats last year, RB8 in standard leagues, and he only played 15 games. I'm obviously not locking him into another 15 touchdown season, but there's still reason to be optimistic when we're drafting Harris in the back of the 8th round as the RB29. So there's a couple things to consider here. First, Harris was third in the NFL in goal line carries last season with 14. He converted 9 of those carries into touchdowns and got 59% of goal line carries for the team. Stevenson saw 5 goal line carries and a 20.8 share of opportunities inside the 5. And even if you're looking at a closer split this season, New England likes to run in these situations. They had the 8th highest run rate inside the 5-yard line last year at 62% and the 5th highest inside the 10 at 59%. So even if Mac Jones shows some improvement, they're still going to run a lot, especially given their well above run blocking capabilities on the offensive line. Harris is also in the last year of his rookie contract, which seems significant. I don't see why Belichick wouldn't intend on using him heavily with nothing to lose, especially considering he was actually good last year and seemingly not just lucky. Harris finished 11th in yards per attempt among all running backs with at least 100 carries, while PFF gave him a top 5 run grade on the year. He was 17th in forced missed tackles and 11 in runs of 10-plus yards. So I think we're still getting good value as the 29th running back off the board on a Patriots team that has a completely immobile quarterback and had more running back rushing touchdowns than any other team in 2021. Also, take a look at the Pats' early season schedule and tell me you don't want a piece of that. Thanks as always for watching. Stick around. We got more coming up. Subscribe to the channel. We'll catch you back here for the next one. Peace.